Good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to all the participants that registered to this webinar on Farmers Registry, conducting collaboration between IPC, the International Policy Center, the UNDP, and FAO, in particular with the Regional Office for the Near East and North Africa, and the Regional Initiative of Small-Scale Family Farming. I hope you will enjoy this very relevant webinar that we are conducted, particularly for our region, but not only, because we will have experiences by our panelists from the different parts of the world. We as FAO, we are good partners together with IPC and with already developed several e-learning and webinars as a tool for rural poverty reduction conducted in 2017. As you well know, I mean, there is strong importance on Farmers Registry as a tool for both agricultural development and poverty reduction. Even if there is a strong commitment by different stakeholders in this issue to reduce rural poverty, still we are combating in order to improve the situation. In order to assist the rural poor, we have to commit ourselves and also commit in a way not only the technical people, specialists, but also politicians in reducing rural poverty in our region and strategize our work being adapted to the local realities in our region. Registration of farmers and development of database is a very important tool in this respect. Can generate various positive impact in public policies and provision of service to rural workers and their families. We as a regional initiative on small-scale family farming are very supportive to Farmers Registry in the region. And we will today show you an experience that we have done it recently in Lebanon, and we are still in a way conducting in order to achieve the results expected. FAO also has several experiences, has supported many Farmers Registry around the world, and this webinar will make the case of this type of database as an important rural development, social protection, management, and statistical tool, and present those cases. Having said that, I would like to introduce the two panelists of today. The first one is Mr. Salvatore Carfi, Italian national. He is a long-standing expert on social thematics, and he's a person that has been collaborating with FAO since some times, in particularly also in the development of Farmers Registries. He works in Brussels, and he worked on different programs in agriculture and rural development sectors, and particularly for the development and establishment of integrated administration and control system, including Farmers Registry. I don't want to take longer, so I pass also to the introduction of the second panelist, that is Ms. Faten Adada. Ms. Faten is a Lebanese national. She was actually our national coordinator on social protection and child labor in Lebanon, FAO office. They recently joined the regional office of Cairo, working and collaborating with the regional initiative of small-scale family farming. She has a master's degree from the American University of Beirut, and she's a well-known officer around the region, and of course, particularly in Lebanon. She has a long-standing experience with international organizations, among others also UNDP and IFAD, and she is a well-known officer in FAO. She has been assisting the monitoring and implementation of the FAO project in designing and establishment of the Farmers Registry in Lebanon. So having said that, I give the floor to Mr. Carfi for his first presentation. Enjoy the webinar to all of you, and talk to you later. Salvatore, the floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Alfredo. Thank you to everybody to giving me this opportunity to provide my expertise in the implementation and designing the farmer register in order to improve the quality of food and the transparency in the rural area. And I provide my presentation at the beginning, considering that we are taking in account what are registries and data management in the EU system. My first part of our presentation will be covered in principle two aspects, two sections. The first is what the registers, and then also which kind of data management is used in the EU system. As a principle of kind of information are important to provide during this webinar seminar. So means that a very important share in the for taxpayer money in Europe, they finance the common agricultural policy that is administered by the member states. For this purpose, in the EU regulation, it was implemented some specific rules dedicate how need to control the subsidy in agricultural sector in a transparent way. This to give an add value and a feedback for the European taxpayer society. In principle, the EU regulation established an integrated administration control system. Means that the principles are focused in the several components. These components, two of them are referred to our seminar, are first of all an list of beneficiaries that is implemented in the EU subsidy, and secondly is the land parcel identification system that permit to verify in the land exactly in the one way the type of crop declared by the farmer, but also the measurement of the crop cultivated. This permit in principle to take in account the rights farmers that submit applications, and this system in Europe started as from 1992. As final preamble, I give you an information that through this system in Europe, in financial terms, are paid direct aids accounting for around 40 billion of the European expenditure. In principle, what are the registers? Do you know that the registers that we used are in principle focused in three different type of register that are used in Europe. First is the farm register is a website application in order to verify the subsidy in the EU system, but also if the farm is genuine. What does it mean genuine? That this is a farmer, it's not have other business, and his business is only dedicated for the agricultural activity. The second step is a farm business in order to facilitate the government in order to prepare policy and for agricultural context, but also for the social protection aspects. These are also very important in order to permit to verify the farm business eligibility, because you know that it's important to identify who is eligible for the agricultural subsidy or for the social protection support. Then also the farm register in the common use is you apply for monitoring a target equality found in order to register all the information that are needed to prepare farm business, but also for social protections. In this way, in the Europe, we have three different kind of the farm registers that are implementing according with the law. The first is the Farm Accountants Data Network, namely FADN, that is a European system in order to collect data in principle on basis of two criteria: economic size and type of farming. The second, for subsidy purpose, is the beneficiary register that is contained in principle several kind of data set informations as lands, as animals, as machineries, workers, and socioeconomic data, but also you can include other information as you wish according with the national context. And the third register is referred to the farm structure survey that every one of us know very well. This is a register for census agricultural operations. What I can say with these three kind of different typologies of registers, that the first and the third register are created on basis or interviews. Means that the public administration involved takes some kind of survey in order to interview the farmers and to collect data. But the second means the beneficiaries register that manage CAP subsidy is a register created on basis of data validated. Means the farmer declare some kind of the information in some application form, but then the administration provide control system in order to ensure that what the farmer said on basis of interviews then is in reality the situation is confirmed and controlled by several technologies. The technologies that is used in principle are the orthophoto or satellite image or external database managed by different institutions. Which are, in this way, the importance of a farm register for social protection and rural poverty reductions. It is important to take in account that creating a social protection and poverty reduction permit to have a very effective and a transparent identification of the farmers that need support and not on basis of the interview. That it permits to target poorest population, because we are on data collect information in advance that permit to select exactly the criteria to targeting poverty in rural area. This is useful also in order to provide the social protection. Having a farm register also is important to avoiding mistakes or abuse as farmers' data is certified and validated. This is permit to precising exactly who is eligible. Is not providing assistance on basis of the interviews. Then, of course, having in the system all the data that you collected, then permitted also to simplify the process using some automatization of selecting the farmers in order to identify poverty areas, but also the poverty target. And finally, the importance is also because of the reducing of cost, considering that the applications data are collected in one touch. Means that you asking to the farmers to have informations for different aspects. Means that to prepare policy in agriculture, to prepare policy in social protection area, but also to monitoring and to define who are eligible for some protection and rural poverty reduction. Which are the requirements and the initial steps for establishment of farm register? First of all, it's important to have in our hand a data set identified. So it means that which kind of data do you need in order to provide a farm register? Because farm register could be different in different countries according with the country's policy. So if some countries will identify only land without animal, okay, you can do. But first of all, it's important to have from point of the national institutions which kind of data set needed to collect. That are, as an example, farm detail, name, surname, address, etc., animal, land, and also machinery is the case. Then we need to have a software and database in order to register these informations. This could be also discovering in the country if already exists some software in order to provide and reuse, or indeed we need to develop from scratch a new one. Then, of course, considering which kind of data set you need to collect, you also need to verify the hardware needs. And then you need to discover in the country is already exists some hardware that permit easily to manage data set. As you know, if we use some alphanumeric informations, also we don't need a very big size megabyte in hardware, but when you manage orthophoto, of course, the orthophoto is images, and then we need a much more adequate and big size of hardware. Another type of information that we need as a layer in the establishment of farm register is an orthophoto. An orthophoto need to discover if have a good resolution, because according with the EU system, a good resolution is scale 1 to 5,000 square meters. So it means that this is the minimum requirement to permit an accuracy of the measurement of the land of the crop using the orthophoto. Then, of course, when you have this data set informations, need to analyze, provide us to the feasibility in order to target this kind of the process in specific country areas, because could be different implement a farm register in Lebanon or implement a farm register in Kenya. Sure, you need to analyze and provide and study feasibility in order to ensure that is a target according with the country where you are working. Sure, as well, we need to involve different institutions because as you know, several times the agricultural contest is managed within the Ministry of Agriculture, but the social protection aspect are managed from the Ministry of Social aspect. So means that you have to connect these 2 or 3 different institutions in order to share information and then to share the benefit of the farm register to be created. For that, it's important, of course, have a memorandum of understanding between them. And finally, we can develop the design according with the previous information and provide and training when we build all the package and carry out the pilot, because the pilot is important to verify if in the full scale then the system designed work properly. So as you say that you have several steps in order to create a farm register, and when we finalize all the steps of design, training and pilot, then we can prepare all the necessary procedure and legislation to run the system in the full scale. The second section of the presentation is a cover for data management. The data management that will be used by a farm register are different: agricultural data and socioeconomic data. The main important agricultural data are the basic farm registration, sure the ID, identification of farmer, personal detail and contact information. The animal are important. The animal are so important in order, you see, for the safety and health situation. It's important to have also a registration of the individual animal to connect within the farm register. Then also we have all individual animals you can register, but also a group animals. We can refer to the chicken, we can refer to the pigs, so are different about the bovine. Additional information in agriculture using for the machinery, because this would be target if you are a very useful potential machinery system, or the machinery agriculture is so old that you need to renovate. And then of course you can register the land parcel and alphanumerically, but also in the graphical layer using the orthophoto, using the image coming from some different institutions that work in principle in data, image, or satellite approach. For socio-economic data, it's important also you have the farmer education and age, sure the income, insurance, social assistance. Is already they have some social assistance, and to avoid overlapping or to avoid to give again the same support that the farmer already received. The workers status and the farmer and the nationality, but also the size of the holding and if this farmer have access to the financial system. Another important data for social economic point of view are numbers of members, means the family farmers that are in the farm area, and also if they have some disability. As you see, these are both information, agriculture data and the socioeconomic data, they are not overlapping. Means in one touch, you can collect all of this information but then you can share for two different scope of policy, because the first agricultural data is agricultural policy, but the secondly it's for the socio-economic policy. But they are collected in one touch, all this information that permit to you to collect and permit to you to target easily who is eligible for social protection assistance. Concerning the maintains and the update, so the first collection of data is made in two different ways. Or through invitation in the local office, in the local branch of the ministries, or directly by the farmer, or you visit the farmers at home or via web. But this depends of the situation in the country. The maintenance of the software database is an important element, because several times during the process is run in live, they need some additional customization in order to review some few approach in order its different aspect that you learn during the operational activities. The update data is an exercise that is important, because without an update register, you are not update information. You cannot target a very good policy. So it is important to take into account that when you implement a farm register, also you have to have a plan for updating the data registered in the first step. So as the last information is important is the role of civil society. The institutions must guarantee an adequate assistance and resource to update data farmer, because one of the main important issues is the updating. Because after the first collection, then we need some resource to update the data that you register in the first step. Because anytime if the farmer buy or rent a new land, if the farmer buy or rent a new machinery, if you farmer increase the family farmer, means any kind of the change, it's needed to update in the register, because otherwise the policy is wrong. The producers' organizations are important because they are directly linked with the farmer. It could be useful use also the producer organization in the process to collect data through delegated tasks. But for that, if is providing the delegated task, they need, of course, to have a memorandum of understanding between the public authority and the producer organization. But also there is important the role of the farmer, because the farmer could be mandatory in the law, in the legislation, for any change. The farmer come in the local branch or directly via web or via internet to update his status. As before I said, when buy new land, when you change the family members number, when have an graduate information, the farmer also is a part of the process overall of society in the family register. So means, to summarize, we have three principal role: institutions, that is the custodian of a register; the producer organization, that they can be help for data collected, but the farmer also is in obligation to him or to her to update the system when any kind of the information. As we discussed before, considering that the agriculture data are managed several times by the Ministry of Agriculture, and the data for social aspect are managed for Ministry of Social Affairs, need to create an interoperability process between both. And for that, it is important to create a unique repository, because otherwise we cannot cross-check any kind of information. This is a very important key point. So if data are managed by different institutions, first of all, we need as a first step to have a unique repository where share information between different institutions. Because otherwise, if we have the same ID card between the Ministry of Social Affairs and Ministry of Agriculture, we cannot share nothing. So this is a very important point to take in account when we build at the beginning a farm register, and also need to have a coordination activities between both. One of the suggestions that in member states is relevant when are different institutions that are involved in this process, they create a steering committee. A steering committee at a political level, but also a technical board that are operational management activities, in order to have the same position when there is to implement or develop new tools within the farm register. This was the first part of my presentation. Now I will continue with the last state information that coming from Brussels at the council level, the last 16 July 2018, during the Ministers' Council of Agriculture in Brussels. Because now in Brussels, in the EU system, we are working for the using farm register by new technologies. New technologies in order to become easy the life of farmers to provide you informations. And in the last 16 July, all the ministers in agriculture in Brussels agreed to have a system managed a new technologies in order to help farmer and to assist him to provide easily the data informations. This was presented by the Joint Research Center in ISPRA, and in order to say that we have now in the position to develop technology for managing of the common agricultural policy as a simplification and modernization the EU agricultural system. So, in principle, do you know that in the first common agricultural policy coming in 1992, McSherry, and we started using some kind of the pilot and provided some satellite image. But then now, after around 25 years, then we develop a new calendar of the acquisition satellite imaging. It will be the Sentinel. The Sentinel one is the satellite imaging that are for free now delivered by the EU agency, and provide a new concept. It's not anymore that the farmer submit an application, but now with this new satellite image that we can provide every 6 days, we pre-filled as a public administration the application and submit to the farmer in a reverse way. Means it's the public administration pre-filled application and send it to the farmer only to have confirmation, and not anymore that the farmer to come in the local office and submit data application. So with this a new concept, then we can improve also the environment, because you can imagine every 6 days we have at disposal Sentinel image from the European satellite, and we monitor any agricultural activity in operational way provided by the farmer. So this would be useful for environment. Also, we can monitoring the food chain, because we can see the all phenology situation of the crop. Means when the farmer prepare the land, when the farmer seeds, when the farmer harvest. In order also we can monitoring with this new system the climate change, providing carbon sinks, and also to protect the food and the safety for the EU agri-food export. Take in account that in Europe, the agricultural land are 48% of the whole territory. So, as you see, that we spend in Europe around 55 billion euro per year, and manage covered by 7 million of farmers. These are the figures that we manage every year using a system where the preliminary data coming from a farm register. So, as you said in the slide, namely technology key contributor to the current CAP, Common Agricultural Policy, you can see how the technology improve. You have 3 different images. 1990, where you see that the image is so poor. In 2000, the quality of resolution improved, and now, as you see, in 2015, the situation is much more better to identify exactly what exists in the land. So this permits to have a new approach, because in 1990 was impossible, because you see, was impossible to have this kind of the information from the image. Now, 2015, as from, we have a very good resolution in image, and then also we can map exactly, as you see in the middle of the presentation, measure the land, as you see here, 9.22 hectares. So you can precise exactly how much hectares are cultivated by the farmer, but not measuring in the field, but measuring in the screen, in the office, means using only the computer. This will be very important for the community of ethics, because we help farmers to fulfill exactly the information, but also change the approach, as I said before, not waiting the farmer coming in the office, but we have a proactive process by the institutions that pre-filled the application and submit to the farmer, just to have confirmation, or if farmer want, take in account also some change. How and where we work about in the technology? In the council ministers meeting, they arrive at the conclusions that we have 2 different of level of the opportunity. First is for the compliance, because it's not based of interview when the farmer provides data, but is on basis of verification, on basis of validation information, using imaging satellite, or using some cross-check in order to avoiding that the same farmer declare the same parcel. as an example. So because the system also internally have software to cross-check information and keep up some warning saying that this parcel is declared W by 2 or more different farmers. This is for transparency and to reach exactly who is the eligible farmers and who is not. Then in the actions for the technology would be improve the performance, sure, because the performance is much more target with the reality. We reduce the error rate because you see that the error rate is a matter of the process when the administration working for collect data, and then we develop an e-governance that we can share with other information using in the national context. Now, how could it be said the relationship between farmers and administration? The idea is ongoing developing. It's using a smartphone by farmers, and the administration send, as I said before, the application pre-filled directly to the his on air mobile, informing him on her that there is some administrative alert or some wrong information that the farmer had to be corrected. So it is a kind of the relationship. It is important because permit with a simple smartphone to provide the farmer directly information in an automatization way. But of course, first of all, it is important collect preliminary information. Without of them, we cannot develop this system. In the slide that we namely all the pictures when you see harvest, plowed, and replanted, you see how the crop conditions are moving every week. So it means that with the new Sentinel image, every week we can monitoring the operationally activity made by the farmer. It is amazing because you can monitoring exactly what the farmer is doing, also for the crop conditions, but also in order to see what the farmer doing in his farm, on her farm, to target condition for subsidy, but also to target some kind of the capacity production crop by the farmer. And then you can arrive to the social protection contest, because you see the farmer what he produce, what she produce, and then we can monitoring exactly which kind of the food needs we have in this contest area. The next slide, you can see that is the software. It's our automatization information that you can see some algorithm that provide you exactly the information if the farmer has it, if the farmer provide the harvest, or if the farmer are planting some kind of the operational orchard. In the slide that is namely immediate from on the spot check to monitoring. So the new system in the Europe avoiding to go on the spot, because we can monitoring directly from the office using weekly Sentinel satellite image. So we don't need it anymore go on the spot, but through this image, we can monitoring weekly from the office exactly what the farmers are doing. It was an amazing change of the relationship between the public administration and then also the farmers, because the farmer know exactly what he doing, but the administration have the possibility to control and to verify and to monitoring exactly what the farmer provide for the society. The technology. The idea was not create so complicated technology, because you know, in our hand we need our relationship with the farmers, and the farmers are poor people. They have no education, and for that we have to create a new system to have a very simple technology to be used by the farmer as a simple smartphone, where he or she immediately click and confirm. This is the message that now ongoing in Europe. Administration prepare pre-filled application, send it to the farmer, and the farmer just to click and confirm. Click and confirm. Click and confirm. We don't need anymore to go there on the spot to measure or to ask the farmer coming in the office. We're just developing new apps in order to have farmers that have the opportunity to give easily, using technology, information for the public administration to use in an interoperability way, for agricultural information, but also for the social protection aspect. All this approach is managed by the Joint Research Center in ISPRA or European Commission, because this is the institute that have the knowledge to develop a new deliverable model in the Europe. So all the member states in Europe are supported by the Joint Research Center or European Commission in ISPRA. So in cooperation, they are developing a new concept, a new strategy. What is important? First of all, that we need to create a strategic plan and performance monitoring, because it is important to have indicators, because which kind of the indicators we need to monitor. An assurance for the area monitoring system, which kind of the area we need to monitoring. If I'll give you an example, orchard or arable land or pasture, so you have to identify the area to be monitored. And also, it is important aspect that all this monitoring system is traveling via a farm register. So the satellite images are to integrate within the farm register using the land parcel identification system, and in automatization way we can provide automatically answer what the farmer doing in operational agricultural activity all the years, every week. So it is important that in the EU system now, according with the new technology, permit to have a system that as from 1990 now it become much more rich, because we implement data information. We are implement also access for the policy, that the policy become much more easy because it is target it's a validate information. It's are not on basis of the interviews. It is for both of aspect in agriculture and also in aspect of social protection. But then also the Europe needs to take in monitoring way the rural areas in order to modernize the food quality, to modernize the farmers' activities, to become much more farmers that they can be competitive in the European system, but also in external borders. But this system is important because it's not just collect, but also permit to farmers to drive them where they are going. Also for the business purpose. This was my last presentation. Then I will be at our disposal to have some questions.
Salvatore, and the experience, which has been very rich, and I hope that our participants have enjoyed and acquired some additional knowledge about the importance and the use of Farmers Registry. Having said that, now I will give the floor to Ms. Faten, that will present the FAO experience in Lebanon. And also, I know that Salvatore might integrate about the Lebanese piloting Farmers Registry we have done in the recent time. So I give the floor to Faten. Please, Faten, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Alfredo, and thank you, Salvatore, for your presentation. So I will the experience of Lebanon in creating the farmer register. The experience of Lebanon in creating registers within the context of poverty and the poverty in rural areas in Lebanon and how to integrate. So let me start by an introduction to the poverty and rural population description. As you can see, next slide please. The poverty rate in Lebanon by sectors show us that in agriculture it is more than 35 to 40% poor people, where over 1 million people, 27% of the population, live under the poverty line. Looking at the agriculture sector in particular has the highest share of poor workers. So next slide, please. We can see in the next slide the counting based on the agriculture census in 2010 within 1,500 villages. You can see that we have 170,000 approximately farmers, and out of these we have around 8.6% of which are females. The average age of the farmers is 52 for the males, 55 for the females. Number of permanent family agriculture labor is 1,065,000. Number of seasonal agriculture labor 2,200 is 51,000. So this is based on the agriculture census, where you can see, next slide please. It is based on an agricultural holding because it's not based on the economic income, rather that this is based on the area and number of livestock. So it was agreed in Lebanon within the Ministry of Agriculture to have the minimum threshold 1,000 square meters of cultivated areas, whether irrigated or rain-fed, 400 of cattle, 7 sheep, 7 goats, 3 pigs, 1 horse. It's either or and 50 poultry or 8 beehives. So this is the based on the statistical unit in 2010. Next, please. The distribution of the holders all over Lebanon. You can see the third column where we have the family labor up to 24%. In Baalbek and Hermel district and the Bekaa is a total of 19%, and South and Nabatieh also is 14% and 20%. These will be an indicative for you to see that Lebanon's rural population have long experienced an unequal share of poverty and under development, mostly marked in Akkar, Bekaa, and South Lebanon. As I was telling you, these are the rural population. FAO started to work in 2015 on this on integrating social protection to the rural areas because of the Syrian refugees crisis that started in 2010, where most of the refugees, namely Akkar, Bekaa, and south of Lebanon. As you can see at the map, these Akkar and Bekaa are bordering with Syria at the east and north of the map. Next slide, please. Having said and having described all this, there was a need to relieve the hosting rural communities and reduce any conflict that might arise from this huge influx and promote social stability and cohesion. So FAO started to look at social protection and commissioned a mapping on social protection systems related to the agriculture, and as well a legal assessment related to any social protection in rural areas. So okay. Of course, not to forget that the small-scale fisheries in Lebanon are to be included in any farmer register to be created within the Ministry of Agriculture, especially that the small-scale fisheries in Lebanon are in a very socioeconomic situation. Like you can see, the average income level is 3,400 per fisher in 1 year, where the owner of the boat is up to 7,400. The poverty level, you can see that the minimum age is 4,500. They are located at the coastal area of Lebanon, up to 44 ports, and the license fleet is 1,962. It's important to note that the registered boats are within the Ministry of Public Transportation, while the fishing license is within the Ministry of Agriculture. And we have also assessed the average age of vessel owners is 49. It's very close to the farmers. It's an aging population. Going back to the assessment that FAO commissioned in 2015, 16, and 17. Yeah. No. Yes, I'm sorry. We did all this mapping and assessment to define the situation of the farmers. We can see that Lebanese labor code exclude the farmers and the farm workers from any social security benefit, and that code is very old as 1946. The Social Security Code in 1962 was the basis of the establishment of a national social security fund, and this also excludes agriculture. Until in 1974, they issued a special law allowing for the inclusion of Lebanese permanent agricultural workers under the National Social Security Fund to benefit from family and end of service indemnity, health, and maternity benefits. But these are still very poor and limited benefit offered to the workers. Next slide, please. Mapping the social policies in Lebanon, we have the social action plan based on the post-war in 2006, Paris Free Donor Conference developed and delivery mechanism of social transfers and service to poorest of and most vulnerable households. This action plan formed the basis of a national social development strategy and, of course, the very important social protection scheme, that is the National Poverty Targeting Program, the NPTP. Let me first start with the National Social Development Strategy. It is developed by an interministerial committee chaired by the Social Affairs and aiming to develop a comprehensive approach for integrated and balanced development in Lebanon. If we look also at any social protection covering the farmers, we have the Ministry of Agriculture Strategies 2015-2019 that is developed to contribute to the economic, social and environmental rural development of Lebanon by improving the performance of the agricultural sector. Due to the Syrian refugees crisis, Lebanon has also the Lebanese Crisis Response Plan. That is a 2-year plan providing framework for combined intervention for Lebanese government, national and international organization to mitigate the impact of the Syrian crisis. The beneficiaries of the LCRP are not only, of course, the Syrian refugees, but also the hosting community to relieve and social protection programs in Lebanon. Next slide, please. Okay, I will start until they do the okay. So let me go to the National Poverty Targeting Program. It was decided, as we were saying, in 2006 to have it and it was launched nationally in 2011. The program's main goal is to alleviate poverty among most vulnerable Lebanese. For those qualify of the program, it is based on demand. The beneficiaries will come and register themselves. It's not for everyone. This is the limitation of that program. And once you are a beneficiary of that NPTP, you are anyone can benefit from a comprehensive health coverage in public and private hospitals, coverage of chronic disease medication costs, school registration, free waivers, and whatever is needed in the school, and food assistance, e-card, and that is called emergency NPTP, and it is linked to the LCRP. We have the health coverage by Ministry of Public Health, where it provides health assistance to all uninsured Lebanese, estimated to be around 50% of the population, in the form of partially or fully subsidized medical services of medication. So, and we have also the health and social services within the Ministry of Social Affairs. There are 220 social development centers all over Lebanon that provide primary health services, vaccination, prenatal and pediatric care through national, regional network. Also, it provides labor market programs through job training services, educational and literacy programs. The Ministry of Agriculture, based on the mapping that we did, also is providing subsidies to the farmers, irrespectively if they are poor or not. Within this mapping and assessment, also we looked at any crop insurance or response to disaster that maybe Life Council, that is a multi-ministerial governmental entity charged with providing emergency relief in times of natural and man-made disasters. But this is not a continuous and permanent support, and it is up to the availability of any fund. Having said this, next slide, please. FAO identified entry points to expand the social protection coverage to rural areas. It was the first step where we initiated a dialogue with the stakeholders on how to ensure effective and adequate access of social protection benefit to rural sectors, both for farmers and farm workers. We were discussing in two dimensions. First, extending social security and decent employment benefit, focusing on a package of health, harvest loss insurance, and old age pension. And secondly, ensuring that any existing social assistance mechanism at the Next slide. During that dialogue, we looked at social security. Social security, we had barriers and opportunities existing in Lebanon. First, let me look at the barriers. Lack of formal recognition of the sector with labor laws, not a defined criteria of what we mean by farmer. The opportunities, whether we have a current legislation that provide the need of to extend social security to all. However, it's vague, not implemented, and but existent. We have the census of farmers and farm workers within the Ministry of Agriculture, but it is still a census and cannot be considered as farmer administrative register. The community and local level have good practices that can be scaled up. We have mutual funds, we have cooperative providing basic services, and some of the mutual funds are looking at the crop insurance, however, still very limited and not operational. Next slide, please. Looking at the social assistance, the barriers were limited and unpredictable funding, relying on external donors, and that is criteria, and mainly the subsidies were offered by the ministries and no cash transfers. The opportunity, we have the NPTP, and we wanted to build on that existence to link it to the farmer register that we all identified a basic need for our mission to expand social protection to rural areas. Next slide, please. So the key finding was that creation of a farmer register is a critical first step to ensure access to agriculture and social services to farmers, and of course to the social security. The creation of farmer register, very similar to what we have heard from Salvatore, is supporting the progressive formalization of the farmers. It's an administrative register for the farmers to enable the access to existing productive and social services, enabling the creation and expansion of new services or new benefits. However, we needed a roadmap to start working on this, and we started with consultation process to identify criteria and definition of farmers, support the institutionalization of the registry and its potential use for multiple purposes. So once we all agreed on the farmer registry being one step to guarantee a better coverage of social protection to farmers, it was also very crucial and very important to have this ownership of the farmer registry within the Ministry of Agriculture, where we could manage that. The Ministry of Agriculture agreed and approved that the farmer register will ensure transparent and fair distribution of subsidies and would be a reliable source of information to agricultural policy and statistics. Next slide, please. The first mission we started, we had a series of meetings with relevant institutions involved in the farmer register with different international organizations and development agencies to justifying solutions. So we met first, as you can see in the table, with the various departments of the Ministry of Agriculture, with the Ministry of Economy and Trade, where they are offering subsidies to the wheat producer, the Ministry of Social Affairs, who are offering also social services and vocational training and job opportunities, development and natural resources directorates for the forestry sector and fisheries sector under the Ministry of Agriculture, so that they are registered. We looked at the Chamber of Commerce because companies and registered producers and agriculture traders would be highly important to register them. The regional agriculture offices of the Ministry of Agriculture were also contacted because it was very crucial to understand their capacity, the staff existing, and all their logistical equipment. The Lebanese Agriculture Research Institute, LARI, was also contacted and consulted because it is where you have this contact with the farmers and wheat producers. We looked also as Salvatore was saying, we needed maps. So we looked at the Directorate of Land Registry and Cadastral offices so that we can have the cadastral maps. The CNRS, the Center of Remote Sensing, which provided us with satellite images and land use and land cover maps. And of course, last but not least, and the most important, with WFP, UNICEF, the World Bank, who were partners in identification of the socioeconomic indicators. Next slide, please. We agreed on a strategy for designing the farmer register that is based on 3 approaches. The first one was assessing of institutional structures, availability of all this collected data, and most importantly, how to train the staff on the designed software. The second step, we agreed on having a pilot implementation phase so that we can test and then advocate for the creation and establishment of the farmer register. We had informative campaign with the governors, with the institutions concerned. We had office preparation, mobilization of local authorities, collection of information, and finally the implementation. And at the end, we have the evaluation phase that Salvatore will be presenting. Now, next slide. Next slide, please. It is very on the EU designed. We have first module, the farmer basic register, including the alphanumeric data coming from the census and the socioeconomic indicators. Second, we have the land parcel identification system, LPIS, and third, the monitoring. Next slide, please. Looking at the basic register, it includes all the information that was already collected in the census, like the basic the personal details, contact information, animals, whether they are farms or flocks, like the person who is responsible of the farmer, who is declaring the information, machineries, fishing license, land parcel identification, and the socioeconomic indicators. So this is the basic register information. Next slide, please. The most important part that we worked on was that we consulted with external partners to decide on what are the main categories of social indicators which are important to identify the poor and the poorest farmers among the farmers population. The first category was based on the household and family level, poverty score related to the NPTP, access to social protection, social assistance, security, or remittances. They have to answer simply by yes or no. And we needed to review of existing response to vulnerability of farmers for future policies. We looked also at the number of household members, also considering the children under 18 years old. Then we wanted also to add the need and poverty status, the number of household having more than 4 children between 0 to 14 years old. The second category is whether the farmers have any support, and the third category was looking at the workers themselves and considering gender, age category, work status, and nationality. These indicators identified were aiming at defining the interoperability model of the farmer register with social registry, the NPTP, and ultimately with the National Social Security Fund registry. This interoperability is not yet defined how we are going to link the farmer register within the Ministry of Agriculture and the social register within the Ministry of Social Affairs, or whether the NSSF within the Ministry of Labor, but the easiest one that we decided is that to collect the ID, the national ID number, that will be a unique ID to identify the registered farmers. Next slide, please. I will skip a little bit this land parcel identification system because already it was described by Salvatore, but only to make sure that we need really not only the software that is designed based on the need of the Ministry of Agriculture and the data that we were describing, but also hardware are needed within the Ministry of Agriculture to host all this information. And it is a huge capacity having all these maps to be collected. Next slide, please. I will start, I will go over this very quickly. The data set used for the pilot were the land cover land use maps by the CNRS, satellite images also by the CNRS and by the Army, the general administrative data from the Ministry of Interior Affairs, the cadastral map from Ministry of Finance, farmers information based on the MOA census, and the cooperative list also based on the Ministry of Agriculture, the cooperative department. Next, please. Yes, next, please. We can skip that slide. We, after everything was prepared, we went to the pilot implementation, providing training for the MOA staff on the use of the software, determination of what we need, detailed cost, action, and all the risks that might the pilot project face. We had to select 2 areas of Lebanon and to draft the need for running the pilot. Next slide, please. The pilot areas were selected based on the availability of facilities and equipment. As Salvatore was saying, going to the regional offices, it's not always evident that in any country everything is available. We have the availability of the regional office, the staffing, and sometimes we look at the electricity, the internet connection, the space to host 20 operators who will be running at the same time, the registration, the availability of high-speed internet to be able to upload all this, the information and the maps, because it is an online process, the availability of printers, and to ensure successful implementation of the pilot, we needed, of course, a plan B, and everything was ready. And in November, we had this pilot. Next slide, please. We looked at the farmers. We needed to invite the farmers, so we decided to make first selection of the farmers having the following criteria: percentage of farmer size between 0.1 to 1 hectare. We have the size between 1.01 to 2 hectares, farmer size more than 2 hectares. So by this we can cover all sizes of holdings. We looked at randomly with farmers representation of total area under arable land, perennial crops and animals. Farmers representation under bovine and land pasture, existence of one cooperative, existence of one company. By this, we could test all the software that was designed. The invitation was through an official letter from the Ministry of Agriculture to the governor, and then coordinated by the regional office, so that the farmers are informed about the pilot and they are invited to come to the regional office and start the registration. We need to only highlight that the interest of farmers in the registration pilot was more than expected. Next slide, please. We had in Yes, next slide, please. We had in 6 working days more than 455 farmers coming to the office and doing the register. I'm sorry, but this picture was showing the minister by himself who was supporting the registration. Next slides, and now it is the last one about the way forward. It's not only to design the software that was important, but also FAOS is continuing the support to the Lebanese government to obtain a legal definition of farmers, define a legal and institutional framework of the farmer register, aiming at its full implementation in 2019. Moreover, we need the major activities are still needed to guarantee a legal access of social security to farmers. Lots of advocacy are still needed at higher level because of the lack of information on the livelihood of farmers and their potential level of contribution, which might be demanding too much from the government to cover the farmers. Sorry if I took a lot of time. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faten. It's been quite exhaustive, the presentation from our colleagues Salvatore and Faten, but I hope this gave a good picture of the farmers registry and also what has been done so far in Lebanon. Now I would like that Salvatore explain to you, the pilot phase of establishing the farmers registry in Lebanon. Please, Salvatore, try to be brief, so that then we have enough time for the floor to ask questions to you and Faten. Over to you, Salvatore.
Grazie, Alfredo. Thank you, Faten. I follow up what Faten presented in order to reach you the pilot activity and the result and the way forward. This presentation shortly, I show you the pilot activity, please. Next. In order to have how the phase was prepared, design, we select 2 regions, preparation of data, design of methodology, farm questionnaire, and consultation and coordination of 2 different institutions, MOA and MOSA, and training provided for the staff selected. Please, next. The software was built in order to customize according with the Lebanon needs, because we define some kind of the internet poor access, and then we provide on the market using 4G mobile Wi-Fi router. These are also unexpected taken in consideration when you data collect information. Another important element that the software was hosted in the FAO infrastructure in headquarters in Rome. So it means that the software is open source now. It's just in the FAO IT infrastructure in open source technology. Next, please. Dataset Faten already mentioned, topographic map, land cover, satellite imaging, cadastral data, farm information already prepared in advance, cooperative list, and socioeconomic data. Next, please. The software module permits to collect all the list of information of basic information, farmers, animal registration, group of animal, person, member of family, workers, machinery, fishing license, land parcel, and land cover, and additional declaration concerning socio-economic indicators. Please, next. In total, we consulted 457 farmers. It was a very huge activity because if you consider them, every day pass much more numbers of farmers was registered. So this was a great job because in at least more of 10 days, we registered more than 457 farmers. Please, next. This was the result we obtained. So it means that the land cover structure that we registered that many information of land cover, wheat and barley, fruit and orchard, and you see there exactly the percentage of the total area that we registered. The most important information was the distribution of parcel per farmer. As you see, the many parcel was in the 62%. But another important information was the parcel size distribution. As you see there in the figures, 30% as between 0 and 0.1. But also another important aspect in your left is the land availability. Means that the ownership of land corresponded to the 81% of the total parcel registered, and only the 90% was on rented basis. Next slide, please. The animal, you see that the many numbers of an animal provided registered was for sheep, around the 52% sheep, and then we have other count of goats and other animal that you see in the figures. Next, please. This is another important information that you can see that the 93% was male and 7 female, but also the farmers age group distribution that you see that the situation there it's the main important was the 40% of farmers that between 30 and 50 years old. The legal structure, you see that the 99% is a physical person. So only 1% was legally person concerning companies and etc. Next slide, please. The analysis for the machinery, as you see there, you can see the age of machinery category that is permit to you to prepare a policy for the new mechanization, but only if you have data at disposal. You can provide a good policy if you need to renovate the machinery in the country. And there in your left, you see all the kind of machinery that we registered in different technologies. Next slide, please. These are all the situations that we have registered: farm education, social insurance, workers per farmer, and the social assistance already received by the farms. And then we can combine information, and then we can go in the, as before we said with Faten, it's important to have this information to target exactly who really need support. And not only because the farmer provide information on the basis of interviews. We register data, we check with data at disposal by different institutions, means Minister of Agriculture and MOSA, and then we arrive at the conclusion that data is certified and can permit to target who is considered poor and who need receive social protection assistance. Next slide, please. This was the validation of data. Then we select a sample and carry out from the office to on the spot, just quality control in order to verify that was what was registered in the office, then match the reality in the field. And the result was the error rate confirmed that the work done in the office was perfectly provided. Next slide. This was an example of registration. Yeah, as you see, the operator with computer and the farmer there close to him or to her, and together identify the location of the parcel in the screen. Next slide, please. Okay, next. This is what the result. This was the structure organization proposed for the full scale after the result of the pilot. Next slide. This was also the hardware requirements for the full-scale implementation, because as I said before, when you manage orthophoto, satellite image, we need much more storage and minimum requirements in order to manage all this process and data images. Next slide. They need also to have some customization after the pilot, means the pilot permit to us to have extra information that is required in Lebanon context. And then for that, we need to have some a little much more customization of farmer that we discovered in the pilot, but help us to prepare the roadmap for the full-scale implementation. So for that, it's important also to carry out a pilot process during the registration in the full-scale of farmer register. Next slide, please. The final recommendation that it is important using all data that is validated and certified, not on basis of interviews, because this taken mistakes or errors. Then the on-the-spot control is important also, just not to measure, but just to verify and cross-check as quality control. Means if the data registered in the office was then confirmed directly on the spot. Of course, it's important to develop software or using existing software open source, because you can reuse in different contexts in the countries and different areas. And it's important also at the last stage of the process of registration to have a summary certified with the data registered by the farmer. And this is important as a visual check, because do you have a summary paper at the last stage with the all data registered that we can share with the farmer, and then we can provide some adjustment if it's the cases or because it was registered not so clear information. Basically, we have three kinds of the information on land cultivation, and on basis of owner, on basis of rent, on basis of legal right to use that is not any kind of the legal document. Then you can provide also some kind of registration, because the farmer said that they cultivate for many years ago. Of course, as finally, when you discuss about interoperability, we need to have a memorandum of understanding between different institutions. Next. It is important to give you the last feedback. When you implement a farm register, it's important to procure orthophoto because it's the very easy approach in order to map any kind of the land cover, but also the measurement. The strategy used was that we can base the pilot using a software open source that would be at disposal with the FAO for other projects to run in other small pilot as a la carte farm register. So what we developed in Lebanon, then also we can use in other country to run a pilot to have this kind of the feedback also in our country, saving the cost to develop a new software from scratch. I conclude my presentation. Alfredo, for any question, I am here.
Thank you very much, Salvatore. Thank you very much, Faten. I think we can go to the questions. Now we have quite a good 20 minutes for questions. And we already collected some from an audience, and some tries to use some of them. We can answer. Some French guidelines of farmers registry available. This is coming from AGEA, this question. Salvatore, did you hear my question?
I have here one question from Mohamed.
No, I can tell you directly the question we received. I already collected all of them. So you can. The first question was coming from AGEA and asking if we have French version guidelines for farmers registries.
At EU level?
Also at EU level. I know that at FAO level we don't so far, but I don't know if they have it at the EU level.
At EU level, we have some European guidelines that are implemented in English only because now it become the English the common language to prepare some guidelines. But what I can do, I can select the main important EU regulation that covering farm register, and I will select also in French language all this list. But
very
only,
good.
Okay.
Very good. Eventually, you can share that with our participants at the second stage. Another question is coming from Mohammed. Always to you, Salvatore. It's about the question is who will guarantee us that the data provided by the civil societies are real, are true? Over to you.
Okay, so a good question. Very good question. So, first of all, the software and the data set to collect are defined by the public administration. So the public administration are the custodian, the custodians of the system. So at the beginning, when the public administration define the data set, they define the specification of the software internally contain some monitoring control system. So if it's delegated to the other members as a farm association, then the software is on the system of on the server of paying agency or the public administration. In the server, the administrator can monitoring daily any kind of activity made by the of the society. First, but secondly, any data collected in the system Then the public administration have a system, namely quality control. The public administration need to select a percentage randomly from the system, random level, between 1% and 2% of the total data registered, and carry out an on-the-spot control.
Thank you very much, Salvatore. I hope that Mohammed is satisfied with your answer. Now I'll give you a little break and go to the next question for Faten. Faten, how did you work out defining a farmer in order to be used in the farmers registry? So, and what a farmer should be doing? Over to you, Faten.
Thank you, Alfredo. This question is also very important and very critical because to start with, we depended on the definition of the statistical unit and the holders. And this definition, like I was presenting, is defined as anyone who has land, producing land with a minimum area of 1,000 square meter of cultivated area, 400 square meter of greenhouse, owning 1 cattle or 7 sheep or 7 goats, 3 pigs, 1 horse, or 50 poultry, or 8 beehives. This was depending on the statistical unit. Yes, and once we depended on that statistical unit, we went to the pilot, we did the registration and the software, but still, as I was saying, we still need the definition of the farmer based on the needs of the Ministry of Agriculture. Now we are at the phase of defining a farmer based on Salvatore, the individual who is having an agricultural activity. Agricultural activity should be defined also by the Ministry of Agriculture and the different directorates, whether the farmer can be also a fisherman, can be a forester, having any product out of the forestry, bee producers, a honey producer. This discussion also went so far within the Ministry of Agriculture to look at the secondary producers who are the food processing individuals. It was a long debate within the ministry because the Ministry of Agriculture in Lebanon is ruling all these different sectors. It's not like other countries where the fisheries might be in another ministry. So this is one part. The second discussion was, and now I can also ask Salvatore to support my answer, is that whether we are looking at thresholds or not. Anyone who's having an agricultural activity, having 1 tree, having 2 trees could be considered as a farmer, or only 1,000 square meter. So this I leave it to Salvatore to answer, because still it is debatable all over the countries. Over to you, Salvatore.
Okay, Salvatore, just a second. So you can complement now the answer of Faten. Since you will be dealing with that matter, can you also explain the criteria of selecting the specific 2 regions in Lebanon? This is a question specifically asked by Abdel Karim. Over to you.
Yes. So the criteria, as Faten said, was linked to cover all the potential land cover existing in Lebanon. Means Arab land, orchard, pasture. So it means the selection was where are all the different type of land cover, in order then to test in the pilot if the system can collect pasture, orchard, and Arab land. So this was the first element. Then we combine this element with the farmer that also have animal. We have this information from the Ministry of Agriculture in order they permit to us also to register animal. And about the sites, as Faten asked me to complement the answer, the size was linked to the capacity of the quality resolution of the orthophoto available in Lebanon. So they have a very great resolution there and permit to us to measure, to identify on the screen a parcel size at from 0.1 hectare. So the source of the sample was also linked of the quality of material at disposal.
So the two regions was also were selected because also we had the suitable and necessary, let's say, assistance by the different ministries to support this exercise, isn't it?
Exactly, Alfredo.
Perfect. So we are running out of time, but there are still very interesting questions coming from the audience. One is coming from Moses. Moses is asking what are the necessary infrastructure necessary to use orthophoto in the case of a developing country. So let's say not with all necessary support like we might have from more advanced countries. Can you please?
Yes, Alfredo. Thank you, Moses, for the question.
Salvatore, trying to understand, always from Moses, what are the details can the orthophoto enable you to monitor farmers' activities? At which level we can get in? We can zoom in. Over to you, Salvatore.
No, Alfredo, thank you, Moses, for the question. So, the only requirement is the quality resolution, and we tested at the EU level that the main important quality resolution in order to have a good measurement on the screen, because we're discussing to measuring on the screen without a on the spot, is have orthophoto scale resolution 1 to 5,000. So it means that 0.5 meters. So if you have this kind of a quality resolution, you can ensure that the system will work properly because it was tested from the joint research center in the European Commission. So this is guaranteed to you that what you measure on the screen then match and reflect with the reality on the spot. According with the server, okay, about the infrastructure. So, do you need many processing servers like a dual process with minimum 10 cores, a minimum 128 GB RAM memory, a storage device, of course, for the raw disk space using an higher speed SAS driver, and high speed internet connection. You remember, Moses, this is one of the problems that we identified in Lebanon, because they have not an high speed connection. Because when you manage orthophoto, then also we need high speed internet connection, because otherwise, when you upload in the screen the orthophoto, and it's so slow. So a minimum 1 megabit connection per concurrent operator.
Thank you very much, Salvatore. We have still two questions. I think they're quite relevant to the subject. And one is for you, Salvatore, and then the next is for Faten. I will ask the next question to you. I mean, Bassem Muhammad is asking, can we use the registration system to establish an effective networking between farmers to exchange information and knowledge, or could be a platform for business opportunities? I mean, how would you answer to this question? How do you see it, Salvatore?
Alfredo, thanks. Bassem, the answer is for both. So we use this register for kind of preparation of policy for the institutional purpose, as but also it's become a network between farmers. They can change innovation, knowledge. They can change a platform for business opportunity. Means I need to have some kind of the crop to cultivate, and the farm have the possibility to share with you what are the needs. So the system being open source, just have access, then you can share information between farmers, between institution and farmer association, but also from the public administration point of view, have using to prepare policy target according with the real context.
Excellent. So we can say this open source is a multi-purpose for information sharing at all levels, which is great. Is a great tool to be used. Thank you very much, Salvatore. Now the last question, I leave it to Faten to answer. And it's coming again from Moses. Faten, would be the reason that have introduced cash transfer system?
As I said, social protection is very new to Lebanon with its all component. Social security is very weak. Social assistance is even weak due to the limited budget, due to the limited planning, targeting. Everything was still missing in Lebanon. So even if we have the NPTP services are still limited in hospitalization and schooling. A little cash is given under the emergency NPTP to the poorest of the poor, and only 5% of the list are having access to this NPTP emergency, because again, due to the lack of funding. There is a huge work is coming now under the UN strategic framework, supporting the government, promoting social protection platform to Lebanon, and most of it is to try to promote cash transfer, to convince the government, and it is within the UNICEF, WFP, and World Bank work, and FAO is having that effort to expand it to rural farmers and poorest farmers. So cash transfer is maybe going to happen in Lebanon, but no one can promise within these conditions of lack of funding.
Thank you very much, Faten. I think we can close here the session. I mean, thanking the active participation of our participants, which has been in a large number join this webinar on Farmers Registry. I would like to really thank very much Salvatore Carfi for his expertise provided to our program here, and to Faten Adada also for her deep involvement in making Farmers Registry a successful story in Lebanon. Of course, I would like to thank IPC for organizing this webinar and giving us the opportunity to let the people know that the Farmers Registry also is under the microscope in our region, and could be very, very successful tool to support farmers in Near East and North Africa in order to reduce rural poverty. Thank you again. Thank you to everybody. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and I'm looking forward to see you again in participation in next in the coming webinars developed by FAO and IPC. Thank you again, and enjoy your day, and eventually the Eid for the Muslim brothers that there are in the Near East and North Africa. Bye bye to everybody. Thank you very much.